Could the return of Cam Rising fix Utah's issues on the offensive side of the ball, or do those issues run deeper than quarterback? We're talking about it on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's all caps, no spaces, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase at Gametime. My name is Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. If this is your first time joining our show, we thank you for tuning in. We'd appreciate if you guys would like and subscribe. On our way to 2,000 subscribers, closing on that. Thank you again for all those of you who do support our show, and also appreciate those of you who support us on Twitter at Locked On Utes, and my personal handle is at Wistrcill. On today's show, as episode number 2 of the bye week goes on here, we'll be talking about Utah landing another high recruit in the state of Utah, Davis Andrews, the safety out of American Fork, committing in the third segment. Also be talking about what I saw in my watch back of the Oregon State game, talk about some of the issues I see popping up for this Utah team on tape, reviewing that. But we do have to start with talking about the potential return of Cam Rising and what that could mean for Utah's struggling offense. So the question I pose is, could the return of Cam Rising fix the Utah offense? And the answer to that is yes. I really believe it simply can, because I believe an elite quarterback can cover up the weaknesses that an offense can have in a lot of ways. We saw last year Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl with, yes, he had Travis Kelce, of course, but there was still some up and down parts of that offensive line. We know the play calling is not an issue with Andy Reid, of course, but even though the receivers out there, they're not exactly Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster had done nice things in the NFL, but I don't think they're on anyone's top 15 or even top 20 wide receiver rankings in the NFL. So you just see what an effect a quarterback can have. We're even seeing the absence of a quarterback have a big effect on a franchise like the New York Jets right now, where you look at a guy in Zach Wilson who's done some nice things and played probably his best game on Sunday Night Football recently, although some people, that's a discussion for another show about how good Zach Wilson is or isn't based on the traction that's getting in the media right now. But you can see that offense would be better if Aaron Rodgers was running it. I don't think that's a hot thing to say at all when you look at the success that Aaron Rodgers had in the NFL compared to someone with less experience in Zach Wilson. Sounds a little bit like, just in terms of that experience factor and how successful one has been and not versus not successful, how successful Cam Rising has been and how overall successful Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson have been. Now, Bryson and Nate haven't gotten as much experience to say, right? We haven't seen a ton of them. We've seen a decent amount of Bryson, and we've seen a few games of Nate, but it's not like we've seen a full season of either of them operating in offense, but it's clear through a couple games. There's also a reason for that. Those guys aren't up to that level yet where they're capable of shouldering an offense. And we know Cam Rising is capable of doing that. And this is just a guy who's led Utah to back-to-back Pac-12 championship, and I still believe is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football today, even with all the talent that's out there. I know some guys may put up the numbers and the highlights that make people go, oh, they're a better quarterback than Cam Rising. But what I always argue with Cam Rising is the consistency. He doesn't always make the sexy throws, but he gets you wins, and he does not have the crazy turnovers. Yes, he'll have a game like the Oregon game last year, which was the worst of his career, but outside of games like that, he's always keeps his team, hangs in tough, and always shows up in the biggest moments, which I don't think you can say for some of the quarterbacks. That's not a shot at anyone. That just, once again, Cam has that resume of being a back-to-back Pac-12 champion and making big plays in big moments. Not every quarterback in college football, and just in general, I don't know if there's any college quarterback currently right now that's a back-to-back conference champion. Maybe the McCarthy, if he gets it done for Michigan this season, but once again, not currently. So either way, when you're talking about just could Cam Rising fix the Utah offense, once again, yes, because you're talking about an elite QB covering up the weaknesses of a team. And what do I mean by covering up the weakness? Well, let's look at the offensive line, right? We know that the offensive line has been struggling, pass protection, blitz pickup, all those things. And we're going to dive deeper into those in the second segment here. But how would Cam Rising make the offensive line look better? By not getting sacked. Cam Rising does a good a job as anyone in, or any quarterback, obviously in the Pac-12, he does this really well of evading pressure, not escaping the pocket. I'll say he's good at escaping the pocket, but evading pressure while staying in the pocket. a guy like a Nate Johnson, he's just going to outrun that pressure, right? And then it kind of turns into a running play more times than not. Although I did think he did a better job as the season's gone on of kind of scanning downfield and trying to make a play. Bryson's more than likely just going to get sacked, or if he does even get hit, he's just going to decide to tuck in and run. There's no looking downfield after he's taken the contact. That is something that Cam does a good job of. He's willing to shake a defender off after nearly getting brought down for a sack, or escape the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, just keep plays alive. And the ability to do that would thus make the offensive line look better, because they're not giving up sacks when they miss a blitz pickup. And whenever the guy gets sacked, that's where it's like, oh, the offensive line is so bad, versus when Cam makes a play, everyone's focus is then on, wow, Cam Rising made an incredible play to shave off a sack. So that's where the impact of Cam can come on the offensive line. Of course, would also just make the offensive line help them in the running game aspect, because they wouldn't face as loaded boxes if the threat of Cam Rising is there, because you know the potent passing ability that he possesses. And just speaking to the passing game, look, obviously the receivers would be better because there would be more accurate balls and thrown their way. And just in general, they'd have a chance to catch more passes because more pass plays are going to be called. And Cam Rising is a more accurate thrower of the football than a Nate Johnson or a Bryson Barnes too. Would also make the play calling better, because Cam Rising can operate 100% of this offense. I think Kyle Whittingham might have mentioned that they opened it up to 75 now to Nate Johnson, but it was somewhere between 50, 75. So still not the full of the offense, as Nate has only been in the system now for entering his second season, a couple games into it. Cam has been here for Utah for, what is this, his fourth or fifth season now, just in Salt Lake. Obviously it'll be his third starting for this team, but I actually think he's been here for 5 in totality now. So it's crazy to look back at. It's been that many, but Cam is more than comfortable, knows what to do, knows where to get his teammates set, the positions, the checks, all that. He does at a higher level than any other Utah quarterback. There is also something, just the belief that having a guy like Cam Rising out there gives you. I think with a guy like Cam Rising being out there, you look back at last year's home game against USC, the guys believe, okay, we can make a comeback in this. Like, the defense is like, if we just get a couple stops, we can give our offense a chance, because you know that Cam Rising is capable of making those special plays in those games. It's kind of like how you heard the Buccaneers, and I'm not trying to compare Cam Rising to Tom Brady. I'm just comparing the effect that it can have on a locker room when you trust your quarterback. Buccaneers players have said before what a boost it was for them to get Tom Brady over. They didn't say Jameis's name, but that's what they implied, right? Is like, oh, we got Tom Brady, so we know at any point we can make a play and we can get back into this. The same way those Buccaneers teammates feel about Tom Brady is a similar way to how Utah feels about Cam Rising, right? In terms of, if he's on the field, we know we can come back. And I think this locker room totally would take Cam over any quarterback in college football. I think that's how much they believe in Cam. They've seen him step up and make plays in big moments. And I think we as a fan base should believe in him as well, because of the ability he's shown when he's taken the field, and that ability to rise up, no matter if it's Caleb Williams across from him or going up and down the field against a guy like CJ Stroud too. This is what Cam Rising has done. So his ability just as a quarterback could raise this entire level of the Utah offense. And I do think that he can fix this offense. I really think the addition of Cam Rising can turn this offense and get them back to the offense that averaged, 36 points a game last year. I don't know if they'll do that this year, just because of when Cam gets back. It might take him a little bit of time to get back in the fold and everything. But I fully expect, if Cam plays the rest of the season, like from Cam starting on, this offense will average 30 points a game once again, because there is still a lot of talent on it, even though we don't know when Brant Keithy gets back. But we expect a Micah Pittman to get back soon. Johnny Maea should be back in at center soon. And just as this Utah offense gets healthier, they should become even stronger as the season wears on. So I do think Cam can fix a lot and most of the issues the offense is currently having. But of course, this Utah team does have other issues that it's just going to be, it might take a little bit more time to fix rather than just Cam. I did say with Cam, right, when he shakes off a sack, that it makes the offensive line looks better, because in the stat sheet, like, they didn't give up a sack, but the offensive line, of course, still got beat. They got beat a lot against Oregon State, and we're going to be breaking down what I saw on tape and where Utah and guys, Jim Harding, just this group in general, really has to get to work during the bye if they want to raise their level and help this team contend for a Pac-12 championship. We're going to be talking about that in one moment, but first, I want to talk to you a little bit more about our friends at Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from the seat, and their best price guaranteed. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. As I mentioned, those last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, lots of great opportunities with Gametime. It's easy to find and buy tickets navigating their website or just the app, and it gives you a view from the seat you'll be purchasing so you can see, okay, what kind of a deal am I getting? Is it fair based on what I'll be able to see during the game or just the event? You also have the low price guaranteed, and with that low price guarantee, it's even event cancellation protection, job loss protection, so many things. That Gametime guarantee can really help out because you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So you can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. That's all caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, want to talk to you guys about another thing we have going on at the Locked On College Network here with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. Eastern Time to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. And yes, of course, that includes Locked On Utes. So College Football Kickoff Live, they'll cover the biggest games, storylines, and matchups in the sport. And they can go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their teams every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, coming back into this one, let's talk about some of the notes I had for particularly the Utah offense. If we have time, we'll get to the defense. Just not as much with the defense. I'll still like anytime you go into a top 20 team's house and you only give up 21 points. I was very impressed by this Utah. And even think about it, like the first drive, right, where Oregon State scored, a little bit of a shorter field because and Utah was in no man's land. They didn't end up punt. They went for it. We'll talk about the play call there, but even that, it's just a little bit of a shorter field, right? So Utah got numerous stops, held Oregon State to 7 going into halftime, and gave the offense every chance to be in that game still and have a chance to win. It's just hard to hold a team under 20, a top 20 team under 20 in their building. And the Utah defense did that. So I don't have many notes for the defense. It's more nitpicks with them. But obviously, good to have notes for the offense. We only scored 7 points. And that last touchdown came when the game was pretty much out of reach, barring a historic level comeback. So let's talk about some of the notes that I had in this one. Let's start with just the first 3 drives in general, kind of set the table of the game for Utah. I did thought that early on, Andy Ludwig came in with some creativity, right? Whether you're talking about the big pass they made to Devon Vele, you fake the screen to the outside, and then you look downfield and there's Vele wide open. He runs a good route to get him open, and then you get a big play right there. Then you also get, even before that, you had a little bit of a get Nate on the move a little bit, make the defense maybe think he's running, and then he throws it to Money Parks. Like just stuff like that, creative rather than just traditional. Take the snap in the shotgun, just kind of survey, because once again, it's just not really Nate's game right now as being a traditional drop back passer. So getting back in. So you had the big pass play, of course, but then the offense would go on to stall on that first drive. And you're looking at the 4th down. It was kind of one of those things where we had a lot of Utah's issues. Honestly, every issue I've kind of talked about on yesterday's show with Utah came together on this first 4th down play that Utah didn't convert and led to their lack of success. Whether you have Spencer Fano locking on his defensive lineman and he doesn't come off to pick up the twist. I've talked about that a lot on this show, how Utah in the first couple games had struggled with twists. And I thought Oregon State did a really good job exploiting that in this game after watching it back. And once again, Utah really struggled to pick it up at all over the offensive line. And blitz pickup in general just wasn't good in this game, as we're going to get into. So you have a pressure come in there. You also, this is where I just don't love the play call personally. I don't like when offenses, and maybe this is their way of doing it because, once again, like Nate, in terms of his passing, is not Cam Rising. So maybe this was their way to try and make it easier for him. But Nate's shown the ability to make throws still in a traditional sense. So I don't like taking away half the field. And that's kind of what Utah did. They put 3 receivers together on the right side. I think it was Vele, Money Parks, and Mikey Matthews, if I remember correctly. You just have them bunched together, and Nate gets it, and you look over there, and that's where all the action's happening. So in that kind of confusion, especially when a blitz comes in like that, there's lots of bodies on top of each other. There's not really a window to throw through, especially when you have a couple of those guys trying to cross and get past each other. It's congested. And that's how it kind of was. It leads to the coverage was good on the play. Nate would have had to make, it was a little bit of an accurate throw, but Nate would have, like even Cam Rising, I think would have probably struggled to make that throw. Most college quarterbacks would have, because there wasn't a lot of separation from Mikey and just the angle Nate was thrown at, and it falls incomplete. So you deal with a little bit of an accuracy. I didn't love the play call, and the blocking wasn't there. I think that's kind of the reason, if you're going to say what's like the main 3 reasons the Utah offense has struggled so far, it would be those 3 things showing up on the very first 4th down of the game. So that was an issue. Let's look at the second drive too, right? Let's talk about the lack of creativity. And we know Utah wants to run the ball. They will when Cam's back even, but you start the second drive with 2 straight runs. The first one goes nowhere, and it's 2nd and 10, and you run it again and you get nothing. So then you put Nate Johnson in a 3rd and long. And then it's like, okay, is Nate capable of getting you out of 3rd and long? Yes, but I don't want your quarterback who's making his first ever road Pac-12 start to be facing a lot of 3rd and longs. And he was right there. And sure enough, it led to an incompletion and then a punt. And I will say that on that second drive in Nate's defense, he actually did throw a good ball. And this is one of the drops. Just bounces off Emory Simmons' hands and he doesn't haul it in the catch. And I will say too, Chris Curry missed a blitz pickup. Utah has missed Mekhi Bernard. Maybe his rushing abilities some, but I do think like Jalen and Jaquin have just done a good job. Where they have missed him most is in the passing game, and probably in particular, I could maybe even argue, is him as a pass protecting back, because that is something when pressure does come in, more times than not, it's usually the running back who wasn't able to take care of his assignment. And most times in general, running backs can't hold up as long in pass protection, but it's really evident to me in these games where I'm like, oh yeah, Chris Curry missed this one, or Jalen Glover missed this one. That's just pretty easy to see what they're going and setting out to do, and they're not able to maintain those blocks. And it's hard to hold them for long, but I've seen, but once again, just Mekhi Bernard does the best job putting himself in the right position, taking the correct blitzer. That comes from his experience, and I should say just playing experience in general, right? Chris Curry still getting his feet back under him after spending all year rehabbing instead of training because of the injury he suffered. And Jalen Glover still just kind of refining that part of his game, something he wasn't really asked to do much last year in general, because that was something Mekhi did most of the time. So that's where it's one of the tough things, just the pass protecting aspects to the backs in this one too. And then moving on from that one, so I mentioned the 3rd and 5, you get the drop there. Then we have the throw to Landon King that would have possibly been a touchdown, but then you get Mokafisi false starting. And this was a tough one, but I think it also just felt bigger than it was, because once again, this is one play that we're talking about. Like, oh, if Utah could have just had that one play. And then you think about it, you're like, wait, there was one play in the first half offensively where it was like, oh, if this goes differently, they might score a touchdown. Like, that speaks to a bigger offensive issue, that it was, oh, if this one play comes to fruition. Like, some games come down to one play late, but like, you can look at all the other positive things a team did to put themselves into position to make it come down to one offensive play. This one for Utah was like, well, if that one thing happened, maybe they could have had scored once. Like, that's way different than how that term that is usually used throughout a game. So that's why that one just felt bigger than it was. And it was a bummer overall too. One thing I really want to focus in on is the blitz pickup issues this Utah offensive line has. And this one came in the game. It was a 3rd and 8. There was 4:32 left to go in the second quarter. OSU showed blitz. Oregon State shows blitz. It looks like they're going to bring 7. They did this a lot. Defenses do this a lot, right? You show like you're going to bring 7, some like 6-5, whatever, and then you just bail out of it and only bring a certain number. So they showed 7. They only come with 5, and Utah had 6 in with Chris Curry also in. So you're like, okay, Utah should have this blocked, but they didn't. And how I'll set it up is there was one coming off of Spencer, so off of the left tackle, coming out there outside on the C gap. Then you have one coming right over him. Then you have one in the B gap between him and Keaton Bills. And then you also have one over Bills too. And you have one that ends up coming through the A gap, basically. And then you have one coming through in the A gap, the A gap between Jaron Kump and Keaton Bills. And then you have a defensive end a D tackle who ends up looping around by Satawa Laumea. And what ends up happening on that play is you get 3 guys basically on the right. Jaron Kump like kind of steps to the right at first, then it bails out, then he looks to the left, but then he turns back to the right on his first look to the right. And this is all happening really fast. This is where it gets tough, but like it's Satawa and Mokafisi on a defensive tackle on the right side. Like, Jaron, you are needed on the interior in that situation. This is all happening really hard once again. And I understand it makes it tough, but this is just what you have to do at this level if you want to be effective. And you see other offensive lines that are able to do it and just do a better job picking up blitzes. And because of that, you basically, once again, have a guy come through free. Chris Curry tries to pick someone up, but even he picked up the wrong guy, I felt like. But Utah could have taken care of this if they did block it correctly. If you have Fano take the guy head up on him, Chris taking the guy who comes off the edge, then you have just if you have Jaron stepping to the left side after the twist, like correcting and committing aggressively to the left rather than kind of staying where he was, I think you could have provided Nate with some more time there rather than, I can't remember if he gets sacked or just has to throw it away now, but that's an area once again where Utah wasn't able to be effective in blitz pickup there. So One another thing, just going through the notes, Nate, inaccurate at throws at times, had a couple that threw, and just in pressure in general. It's always tough because that's what he was throughout the game a lot, but had multiple ones at his receiver's feet, just low balls, sailed a couple of them too, just still struggling with those accuracy issues, as we talked about. Another thing that's plaguing this offense. And eventually Nate would get benched. So then Bryson Barnes came in, and you see some of the positive things Bryson can do, right? Whether you're talking about the 3rd and 3, his first third down where he hangs in there. Jaron Kump missed the blitz pickup, it looks like, and he throws a quick ball to Landon King. And I really like what I'm seeing out of Landon King. Once again, this is a guy Kyle Whittingham's like, oh, once he puts on more weight, he'll be more effective for us. No, he's already making plays. He's already being effective. Like, of course, I think what Kyle's talking about is like one of the mainstays on the offense rather than just coming in at spurts and on certain formations, but you can see the good things he's already doing overall too. And then after that, you had other issues too, because you have the miscue where the offensive line is sliding to the left, but Satawa steps to the right. It looks like he's going to try to take on a blitzer, but usually this is where, like I said, we're not in the locker room. We don't know. Usually those rules are, okay, you take the guy that's head up in front of you and you get the defense. And it looks like Satawa, just even on tape, it looks like he's kind of like, oh, I messed up, because the defensive end slants. And because the entire offensive line steps to the left, Satawa steps to the right, that creates a wide open gap through the B gap between the center and the tackle. And it leads to Bryson. He's able to shake off the first sack, and then he gets absolutely demolished. That ended up being that targeting call or spearing, whatever it was, that allowed Utah to extend the drive to. And then later on in the game, you had a key third down where I think Utah actually didn't get this short yard situation, but then like the next play they came back and got it. But this just illustrates some of their run blocking issues. This is what's been the issue for Utah in their zone blocking, is you do your double teams on the defensive lineman up to the second level. So it'll be like center guard working together, guard tackle, tight end tackle, something like that. Utah will do that, but one of the players will get so locked on with that defensive tackle or just defensive lineman that they can't come off and collect the linebacker. Usually the way zone blocking works is like you're supposed to push that defensive lineman up to the second level. And if the linebacker comes at the guard, like the guard would take him, and if he comes to the center takes him, and whoever isn't taking the linebacker takes over the defensive lineman. When Utah has their best runs, that's how it's played out. Utah in this one, and a lot of times throughout the game, they don't get to the second level because one of the guys gets locked on and they don't see the linebacker running right by them on the other side. So that's where some of Utah's running game issues have come. And I've also talked about it before, how I just feel like the running game has been very vanilla at times too. Also, then you get down. So Utah was able to drive down, though, get on the 5-yard line. Good blitz by the Beavers. Jalen Glover does his best to try to get over. I thought he took a poor angle. He recognized it. I just thought his angle, he came a little too far forward, gets just enough on him. But then you have Jaron Kump who gets beat there. It was a rough goal line series for Jaron Kump because he gets beaten pass protection there, just gets a little too far, almost upfield, but not like enough like, oh, a legal man downfield, but just he worked too far upfield. So then the defensive lineman was able to get past him. Then, of course, he had the low snap. Bryson gets smoked. And yeah, Bryson threw a pick, but it was already 3rd and forever for Utah anyway. So, of course, you want to get the field goal in that situation. But the issues with the blitz pickup and the bad snap had already kind of sunk any chance at meaningful points being a touchdown in that game. Another thing I just noticed, we talked about the blitz pickup being an issue. And a lot of times with the blitz pickup, there were way too many times that it would be Jaron Kump, Michael Mokafizi, Satawa Laumea, like all on the right side, and there'd only be one defensive lineman, and then like Kump would realize it and have to come back over to the left. Utah just needs to do a better job in blitz protection, picking up those Swifts, all those things. Also, I'd love to see more screens and just more targets to the tight ends as well, kind of after watching things through. Just more screens to take advantage when you are getting beat, of trying to set something up there, and continue to get Landon King, and of course Thomas Yasmin with the big touchdown he had. And just he's such an explosive player that's hard to tackle. Definitely want to see more Yasmin in these final 7 games that Utah is coming up to. So hopefully that is something that can be incorporated more for this Utah team. We do want to talk some defensive film. Maybe we'll do that on tomorrow's show, as we're running out of time a little bit here. But I do want to talk about Davis Andrews committing to Utah. We are going to be talking about the American Fork safety committing to Utah in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretchy khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts because those regular shorts, they're made of that stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs was able to fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks like khakis but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that can keep you cool and dry all day long. Bird Dogs are functional for any occasion, whether you're going golfing, going on a date, having an evening out, just hanging out the pool, working out, lounging, going to work, and of course, watching college football. Bird Dogs have become my short of choice, and they can become your short of choice too, because you can go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege or enter promo code lockedoncollege at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. I can also promise you I don't like taking my Bird Dogs off either. Genuinely have become my favorite short of choice. Alrighty, closing this one out, talk about Davis Andrews. So Davis Andrews commits to Utah. He committed to Utah over BYU, UCLA, and Notre Dame. How about that list of schools right there? Impressive get for Utah. The safety, 6'2", 199 pounds. Davis Andrews out of American Fork on the season so far, over 20 tackles, 2 picks, has 20 catches and over 500 yards on offense with 8 touchdowns too. So he's hopefully when he does get on the field at Utah, he'll be one of those defensive backs who breaks the mold of DBs can't catch. Like he's been making nice grabs all year for American Fork. And I want to talk about what he does as a player, but it's just hats off to Kyle Whittingham and even more so the recruiting staff in general for landing Andrews and just taking care of business in the state of Utah. Utah now has 4 of the top 6 players from Utah, and it looks like they could be getting a few more of those commitments even locked in. So the best schools recruit the best players from their states. It's why, you see USC is kind of starting to turn things around, being California what it is. Texas, everyone was kind of always surprised they were down, but like Alabama, Georgia, those places always get the best players out of their state. Ohio State's another one because that's a good place for high school football. Got to get the best players in your own state if you want to be an elite program. And Utah's really started, and I shouldn't say be elite program, maintain being an elite program. And that's what Utah started to do. So hats off to the recruiting staff. But talk about Davis Andrews. I've been lucky enough to actually call his game. What would that be? 3 times this season. I've seen Davis Andrews in person, called a few of his games last time too. And he's remarkable. When you just talk about the ability to fly all over the field, he's the type of guy who always makes touchdown saving tackles. He's got that rangy safety ability. He can play in the box or shut down the pass. He breaks up numerous big plays. He's a guy who, if it's an RPO, take the first step, a couple steps down when you think if it's a run, you need to come down and support, but then can quickly backpedal and just get back and knock those big plays away, as I mentioned. Really strong tackler, a great athlete, good hands, does a good job battling for passes too. This is arguably the best defensive back in the state of Utah. There's also some other good DBs too, one from Bountiful in particular that I know his name, but if I say it right now without having Googled the pronunciation, I'm going to butcher, so I don't want to say it to disrespect him. But Andrews is a huge get once again for this team. Just a really rangy safety who I think could make an impact early on because of what a strong tackler is, the angles he takes. Already talked about the ability in coverage. He's a guy who can come down and I think cover guys in short yardage situations. Like just on quick little routes. I don't think he's a guy who's a burner who's going to be running for the fastest receivers, but he does possess good sideline to sideline speed at the safety spot, high IQ, good last line of defense, does a good job watching and just reading quarterbacks' eyes. So nice guess for this Utah football team. Davis Andrews, a really good player, and Utah just continues to do work in the state of Utah too. So very impressed by their ability to land a guy like Davis Andrews and excited to see him get up to Utah and just have an impact because I definitely think this is a guy who's going to be making an impact on this team. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. As I mentioned, tomorrow we talk about some of the defensive film too and more other fun stuff coming during the bye week. As I said, if you guys want some questions answered about this team, make sure you guys send those in. We're going to be doing offensive grades throughout the week, second half of the season predictions too, talking all things Utah football, even on the bye week. Locked On Utes doesn't take a bye, so we will still be with you every single day, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.